Hi guys, it's Mandy from Mandyleeplays, and we have a third before you buy. I know it's overwhelming. I wish they would, spread them out, but hey, I can't change it. But anyways, we are here to talk about Monster Hunter Stories 3. So this is the third entry in the Monster Stories series, and I love this series so much, and I can't wait to share with you guys everything you need to know. So this is going over the console specs, a synopsis of the story, and a little glimpse into the gameplay. The Monster Story series is a spin-off of the mainline Monster Hunter games. I played 1 and 2, and I love those games so much, and I also love the mainline Monster Hunter games. But I know a lot of people don't know about the series or want to know more, so this before you buy is perfect for you. And to help figure out if you want this game, Capcom released a demo for the game. I love demos. I did a whole video on why demos are needed, and this is a good example of that. But anyways, let's get into the video. The first part is, do you need to play the other 2 games to understand Monster Hunter Stories 3? No, you don't. This game is a separate journey from the other 2, and while there are Easter eggs and references, it doesn't really impact the story all that much. So Monster Hunter Stories 3 is treated as a completely separate journey. So much so that this game does take place in the same world as 1 and 2, but 200 years after the events of 1 and 2. They took the whole Legend of Zelda concept where if you want a new game, just place it a bajillion years in the future and all the events in the past don't really matter. So therefore, I could confidently say that you don't need to play the other 2 games, and Monster Hunter Stories 3 is a perfect starting point for any new beginners. Alright, now let's get into the meat of it. Monster Hunter Stories 3 is releasing on all current gen consoles. So this includes the Switch 2, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S, plus the PC and the Steam Deck. Alrighty, let's get into it because this game has a lot of different variants depending on the platform. I was kind of surprised. And because it's on the Switch 2, I also have to mention, is it a key card? Yes, it's a key card. Brum, brum, brum. So as you can tell by my tone of voice, I don't like key cards. I won't get into it here. I want to just keep it moving. There's a lot of other stuff I want to talk about. So for the Switch 2, it runs at a variable frame rate with the reported 900p resolution. But with that, it does fluctuate further when you battle. And in cutscenes, it runs at 60 FPS, but the game flip-flops a lot in the gameplay where it runs at 30 FPS, but some parts run at 60 FPS. That's why I said it has a variable frame rate. So if performance really bothers you, I definitely would not recommend the Switch 2 version, but besides the variable frame rate, the Switch 2 one does look very pretty. It's not as sharp as the PlayStation 5 obviously, but it is still really good and it's still playable. Although Capcom should really try to push for a patch for that thing, because the frame rates are all over the place. Now moving on to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox. Now this is a bit tricky because both of them have a setting that's quality mode, balance mode, and performance mode. So on the base PS5, quality mode is capped between 30 and 40 FPS, although from what I've seen, it hits a steady FPS on the PlayStation 5 Pro. I don't have the Pro, so I didn't witness it, but I've heard other people say it's steady. And also, I don't have an Xbox Series S, but from what I've heard, reports say the same thing. Quality is 30 to 45 FPS, occasionally reaching the 50s, but this is on quality mode. If you switch to balance mode or performance mode, the FPS is more steady. So for the PlayStation 5, if you pick balanced mode, it hits 60 FPS. Same for the Xbox Series X. But keep in mind there are differences between the Xbox Series X performance and the Xbox Series S performance. Just know that the FPS mileage may vary. I don't know why in the heck Capcom didn't lock these things down, but that's a topic for another day. And finally, there is performance mode, which is the mode I always pick no matter what the game. It offers the lowest resolution of the 3, but it hits the highest frame rates. And from my experience, it locks down the frame rate better than the other 2 options, so it's not really fluctuating as much. On the PS5, the performance jump is astronomical, with the game averaging between 90 to 100 FPS. And for the PlayStation 5 Pro, the FPS goes up to 120. And according to the test that I've seen, the Xbox Series X is the same. If you ask me, I would definitely pick performance mode. I do that for all of my games actually, because I like my games to run smoothly and they still look pretty even on performance modes, but that's just my preference. Anyways, back on the topic. Now for the PC, whew. Okay, so Capcom has a bad track record for optimization on PC, so all we could do is wait to see how that goes, but here are the specs for it. And for the Steam Deck, it has the green verified mark, so it means it runs decent, but you might have to go into the settings and tweak with it a bit to really optimize it for yourself. I did not expect this game to have so many different performances on each console, but here we are. So hopefully I presented this right and you got the necessary info that you need to make a decision on what platform you want to get Monster Hunters 3 at. For me personally, I played the demo on my PS5 and it ran perfectly fine. I didn't really see anything too glaring, although there were the occasional frame rate dips. So hopefully Capcom patches that up. That was a lot. Time to go over the setting and the plot. Now this is where a lot of the improvements come into the game compared to the other two. And as a person who's played the other two, 3 is going for a more bigger story. And before I move forward, I want to let you know that yes, Rathalos is in this game a lot. Rathalos is basically the poster child for Monster Hunter Stories games. And in the other two games and in this one, Rathalos is the key point when it comes to the story, which I don't mind. I like Rathalos. He's cool when I'm not hunting them down at least. However, in Monster Hunter Stories 3, they're showing Rathalos in a different light because according to the lore, Rathalos are said to be extinct, gone, zero, finished, wiped out, nowhere to be found because of a phenomenon of unknown origin called the crystal encroachment, which as the name suggests, it encroaches on the habitats for both the monsters and the humans. And if you put 2 and 2 together, you can assume that because of this is probably why the Rathalos are extinct. This is until, after a few years later in the Monster Hunter Stories 3 universe, they find an egg. And guess what's in the egg? Rathalos. And this is a sign of hope for the future of the species. Though there has to be the female variant too, because if you guys don't know, Rathalos are just male. And the female counterpart is actually called Rathian. So they pretty much need both to survive. But maybe I'm just thinking too much into this, I don't know. However, this beautiful sign of progress is disrupted when the egg decides to hatch, because not only is there 1 Rathalos, but 2 Rathalos. Now you might be thinking, 2 is better than 1, right? Especially for a species that's, you know, extinct. But in this universe, twins are kind of a bad omen. And a lot of people are looking at these 2 Rathalos as bad omens. And this is coupled with the fact that the humans are not really being peaceful with each other, because when the story starts, we have a few different kingdoms at war with each other. And they're at war because of the encroachment and the dwindling space, population, and food that is occurring. So with all that background in mind, you play as the prince or princess of the Kingdom of Azuria. Now, it's not clear if you're adopted, but it's kind of funny when you create a character and they just look so different than the mom and the dad. And the game truly starts when you see a flashback of the egg hatching, and it hatches 2 Rathalos. And even though you keep 1, the other one is, I don't know where he is. He's probably doing something evil omen-like. But anyways, you are also what is called a ranger. And rangers are basically those who are tasked with research and hunting down feral monsters affected by the encroachment. And as you move forward in the story, there's another princess from Valamor, and her name is Eleanor, and she is the hostage. I use hostage loosely because not only is she free to walk around, she could actually get a job as a ranger and talk to the princess or prince whenever she wants. I don't know, that's a very comfy hostage situation if you ask me. But anyways, moving on. So Capcom themselves has stated that Monster Hunter Stories 3 is a more mature storyline than the other 2. Mature in Capcom ways. It's not gonna be a Game of Thrones kind of thing. If you played the previous installments, which is the first one and the second one, they felt like a morning cartoon kind of feel, but not in a bad way. So I'm hoping that 3 has a more intense storyline with actual stakes. So yeah, this is the synopsis of the setting and plot. I hope I did it justice and I got you guys intrigued. Now for the next point, we are going to be talking about the gameplay. So the gameplay is very similar to Monster Hunter Stories 1 and 2, but if you haven't played the other two, I'll explain it. To put it simply, this game is like a rock, paper, scissors kind of gameplay, where attacks are categorized into 3 different types. And these 3 types are power, technical, and speed, to form a little triangle where one's weak against the other. So it goes that power beats technical, technical beats speed, and speed beats power. Gaining the type advantages allows you to cancel an opponent's move, and you can also inflict extra damage during a head-to-head encounter. But what's a head-to-head encounter? It occurs when you and an opponent target each other directly, and it is used to break down a monster's wyvern soul. And when you reduce a wyvern soul to 0, they stagger, which gives you a good opportunity to attack. And of course, it hits maximum damage with very flashy attacks. But first, you have to fill up the kinship gauge. Now, the kinship is explained in the story, but it's basically a bonding thing that you use with your riding monsters. And every time you're in sync with your monster, a little bit of kinship gauge fills up, and then you could unleash your kinship skills. Now these skills are very powerful, but they're also very cool. But you also have to keep in mind breaking their monster parts. Now this is achieved when you attack a certain part of the body. They will drop monster parts, preserving the familiar and addictive gameplay cycle of the mainline games. Alrighty, now let's talk about the new mechanics that we're gonna see in Monster Hunter Stories 3. First being Synthro Rush, which could be triggered when a monster is toppled. And this move not only deals significant damage, it also rapidly fills your kinship gauge. But beyond the combat, this game has a Pokemon-esque style to it with the monster collecting. But Monster Hunter Stories is no Pokemon clone, like at all. The only things that they share is collecting different monsters. Now in the Monster Hunter Stories term, these are called monsties, which are very cute. Monsties. Now, how do you collect these monsties? Well, you go into a monster's den and then steal their eggs. Some are harder than others, and your palico somewhat tells you the rarity of the egg by their scent. If you manage to escape, egg in hand, and avoid the mother, then you take the egg to the breeder. Now I will say I love when you hatch a monstie and it's literally the monster, but tiny, and they look so cute. They look very cute. Too bad they don't stay like that for long. And then with all that done, you could add that monstie into your party. Now this is where all the familiar stuff from the first 2 games kind of stop, because in the 3rd game, they're adding new features to this system as well, like habitat restoration, ecosystem ranks, and dual element monsters, which just sounds really cool. With all these new inclusions plus the old one, Monster Hunter 3 is looking like it has the potential to be the ultimate team building experience. Now moving on to the monsters and the weapons, because this wouldn't be a Monster Hunter video without the monsters, or in this case, the monsties. So while we don't know the exact number, this game has more monsters than 1 and 2 off the bat. And in Monster Hunter Stories 3, we have new monsters. Well, not new, but new to the story series. So let's go over them. And sorry if I butcher any of these names. Number 1, the Great Izuchi, Gross Harag, Malzeno, Raidao, Nargacuga, and my favorite from Monster Hunter Rise, Magnamalo. And this is just adding to an already big catalog of monsters. And there's also gonna be the mutations of some of these monsters, like Maltanos, monsters that adapt to your environment, and also feral monsters. Now, I should have put this in the story category, but feral monsters are, like the name implies, very angry monsters, and they're usually stronger than their normal variants. And this is because of the encroachment that's happening. Although there is a new monster class that is tied to the habitat restoration. Now this restoration is because monsters are coming into a new environment that they don't belong to, thus interrupting the whole ecosystem. And your job as a ranger is to also defeat these monsters so the ecosystem can get back into balance. But not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, you can also release these monsters to their own ecosystem. And this in turn will give you more rank in the area. Now for the weapons, there are 6 different weapons. This being the Great Sword, hammer, hunting horn, bow, and the gun lance. There is no sword and shield, instead is traded for the longsword. I am really bummed there is no dual blade. There's a bow and arrow apparently, but no dual blades. That's a bit too much. And if you guys couldn't tell, I'm a dual blade wielder in the mainline Monster Hunter game, so I'm pretty sad that it's not in this one. Wasn't in the first one and it wasn't in the second. And to get these new weapons and different armor, which by the way they look very cute, you do need to break some parts off of monsters, so keep that in mind. Overall, I am loving the progress that they did for Monster Hunter Stories 3. There is so many new content that hasn't been seen before, so as a lover of not only the mainline games, but the other two story games, I am really excited for Monster Hunter Stories 3. And that's pretty much it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, or any questions that you have. Hit that like button if you liked the video, and consider subscribing if you're not yet subscribed. Also, hit that hype button if you want to. You can follow me in my socials in the description down below. I hope you guys have a beautiful, wonderful rest of the day, and as always, play a good game. Peace, peace.